Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Sencut Toxodon. This is a little bit bigger than the Waxahachie that we had seen from Sencut, and I really hope we see more fixed blades, especially some EDC fixed blades coming from Sencut. This one, in my opinion, would be a great camp knife to do food prep at a campsite, or maybe a budget hunting knife. Comes with a nice 2-part Kydex sheath, tons of lashing grommets all the way around. Comes with the Trezola T-clip right here. So all you do is push these out right here. You can slide this however wide your belt is. And you can see you can mount it scout carry, kind of can't. There's so many different ways you can mount these clips. I don't typically use them except whenever I'm carrying bigger fixed blades like this. Got a nice little comfortable spot to push off on. Nice positive click. No rattle whatsoever. Like I said, this is my second Sencut fixed blade, and both of their sheaths were remarkably good. These come in at 9.57 inches overall. They have a 4.57 inch drop point blade, and this particular variation has a beautiful raw stone wash finish that should hide wear really well, and it's nice and smooth to the touch. You got a nice long top swedge right there for some added flare and to thin out that top portion a little bit. You got a little ramp right here with some nice effective jimping that does its job to grip that thumb without being uncomfortable, but it's not going anywhere. You have a pretty robust tip there. You should be fine with, twisting and turning into some wood or sticking it into a log to do some feather sticks. And the blade steel on this one is 9CR 18 MOV stainless steel. Now, I've tested a lot of 9CR from Sencut, and every single time, it never fails. Every single time I test it, it blows me away because it's a lower end budget steel, no doubt about it. But with the proper heat treat and a nice sharp edge with some good blade geometry, they usually perform really, really well. We'll find out in just a little bit. You have a very well executed sharpening notch right there. Love that. You can see that plunge grind comes all the way back right here, so you can have all that sharpening life right there. And if it ever starts to flare right there, you can lay a file right there, preferably like a diamond file or a carbide bit on the Dremel, and just open it up a little bit more. It's not too big to where it's going to get hung up on things. That's my favorite type of sharpening choil. Now this one has a pretty high flat grind right here, broad blade, and while the blade geometry is thin enough to where it should be a great slicer, it's also thick enough to where you can use this a little harder. You can baton with it if you'd like. It should be a-okay. Now, like I said earlier, as long as this has a nice sharp edge, it should perform really well. Let's find out. Man, I wish y'all could feel how effortless it is to slice this cardboard. Sencut, in my opinion, does a phenomenal job with sending their knives out razor blade sharp. I mean, ridiculously sharp. And being that 9CR 18 is a very low-end budget steel, it's a testament of how well the heat treat is on this steel, because it always impresses me. It's not gonna outcut any knives in, say, Nitro V14C, but it can definitely hold its own and well above its price point, I can tell you that. You got a lot of usable blade here. Now we're testing the ergos, and I start increasing pressure more and more. First thing I notice right off the back is how skinny these scales are. I don't know exactly what they are. I'll figure that out before I do the review, but I'm able to get a lot of force into it. You see me repositioning. It's not that it's a hot spot or anything. It's just the thinness will cause fatigue in wrists and forearms. And it just, I don't know. I don't understand why they went that thin. But get to this 1/2-inch sisal rope, and it's in the last month, besides the Neves Knife Co. Offender, this one sliced the best, hands down. I would say it's probably tied with the slicing performance of the Fender, and the Fender's got a thinner grind and much better steel. But it all has to do with how sharp the edge is That knife was sharp. Now this one's incredibly sharp. And you know, I cut a reasonable amount of sisal rope with it. I think I made like 125 cuts. And you know, the 9CR, after I get done with this, if it doesn't have, you know, the working edge I want on it, I can easily strap it back in no time. It doesn't take much time at all, or hone it on my ceramics. That's the beauty about a steel like this. It's also, you know, tough enough to baton with. You got enough meat behind that edge, and you can also use that tip a little bit harder. Now the tip is a little higher than I would normally like, but this is a bigger fixed blade, so I don't mind as much. But nothing I put in front of this knife struggled at all. It was a joy, because I tested probably 2 knives before this one. They just did not perform great at all. This one was a breath of fresh air. Outstanding job once again, Sencut. Man, it's been a while since I tested a Sencut and I wasn't impressed. Now, that's an understatement. They usually send their knives out hair popping sharp or hair whittling sharp. I've had a couple from them that were hair whittling sharp out of box. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When it comes to the 9CR 18 MOV stainless steel, Sencut does by far the best job with it. I've tested a few from some other companies. I know Kazi used it for a little while, but none of them could compete with Sencut's. Now, whenever I was doing all the testing, it sliced well because of its sharp edge. And being that you have this wide blade here, you got a lot more mass up top. So whenever I was doing the sisal rope, if you were paying attention to how quickly I was going through that, you know, whenever it's not super sharp or doesn't have a bunch of bite, you'll see me going through it and kind of like wiping the table off, kind of buying myself some time so I don't create a bigger one like that. But not the case with this one. And I think that has to do with the extra mass of this wider blade and, you know, that sharpness. It was gliding through it like butter. Feeling this edge, it still feels good. One thing about the 9CR, it's very, very easy to strap back as long as you don't have the edge damage. And it's extremely easy to hone on a ceramic rod, and it sharpens very easy as well. I thought it handled every single thing that I put in front of it very, very well, especially the fact that this is a $53 fixed blade, $53. As far as the ergos go, you got a fairly neutral handle. You got a nice little guard right there. So if I'm choked up, my medium-sized hands, I got a ton left over, so it should fit large, even extra large hands, fine. If I want to get a little bit extra reach, I can come back here. You know, maybe if I want to do some slap chops. Now, this isn't going to be the best chopper because it's not a super heavy fixed blade, but if you need to do some light chopping, you know, I don't know, making a tent steak or something, you could do that with this one. You also have a lanyard hole in the back of the tang right here. Of course, full tank construction. Now, whenever I was doing everything, there wasn't any sharp areas at all on these scales. You got Peel Ply G10 that offer the perfect amount of texture without being too overly grippy. And look how good Sencut always does such a good job of rounding over this edge right here, and it just melts into itself. Now your scales are shadow boxed, but if you look at the tang that's exposed, it has a nice bevel there. I don't ever feel this. I hear some people yan about that. Oh, it's gonna hurt. Well, they must not use their knives because my hands feel everything. And I have never felt anything from these exposed tangs, especially on Sencuts. Now, as long as they put that bevel there, you don't feel that. Now, the only thing I did notice, being that these scales are so thin, they come in at 0.395. That's pretty thin, especially for a fixed blade. Average scale thickness on a folding knife is 1/2 inch. So these are under the average of a folding knife. And when it comes to my fixed blades, I much prefer them to have 0.6 or greater on the scales, because not only does it make it more comfortable, what I notice on this one is, and just like I do on a lot of the folders I test, when they're as thin as they are, even though they're comfortable, over a prolonged period, you're having to squeeze it a lot tighter because of how thin it is, so it doesn't twist in the hand at all. And you're going to fatigue your wrists and forearms rather quickly. I did notice by the end of the wood shaving that I was starting to cramp up. Now, your mileage may vary, but for me, I definitely noticed it. One thing you could do, if you love this, but you definitely wanted this to be thicker, you could make some more scales, but that's on the harder side. Or you could put a paracord wrap over the scales. That would make it pretty darn comfortable. Or I've used hockey grip tape or baseball bat grip tape. Both of them are nice and cushioned, and do a very tight wrap around it, and that'll give you the right amount of girth. You can do it as many times as you want. You just got to be careful that you don't interfere with this portion of the sheath. I always just mark it off and go from there, or you can go all the way to the end and heat up the sheath and remold it, but that's too much work. But besides the fatiguing, it was extremely comfortable. And like I said in the beginning, the flat grind is thin enough to where it's going to slice well because of the grind height and the mass. This one comes down to around 23 thousandths behind the edge, which for a folder would be pretty thick. But for a fixed blade, I think that's more than acceptable because, you know, if you want to use this hard, you're going to want that little bit of extra stability behind that edge. And it has 0.158 inch stock. Now time for some size comparisons. It's a little smaller than the Kaiser Bolt. And as you can see, it's a good bit larger than the Sencut Waxahachie. And it's just a little smaller than the Sativian ST17. And it's a barely longer than the Lothar Fox. And lastly, it's just a hair shorter than the Gerber Prodigy. And it's a hair longer than the QSP Canary fixed blade. Now, being that no knife's perfect, let's go over some nitpicks and complaints. Really, the only thing that I'm going to be nitpicky about is the scale thickness. I think this would have been that much better if they would at least went half an inch thick on these scales. I mean, even the 0.51 inches thick on the Waxahachie. This one, I can do a lot more work with this one without fatiguing. I mean, you can see the difference. It's a pretty big difference there. But for me, that's not a deal breaker because I can either make some other scales if I wanted to. But being this is a $53 fixed blade, I'm probably going to put a paracord wrap over it, more than likely. Or if I have any more of that baseball bat tape or hockey grip tape, I might put some of that because it's a cushioned material. It sticks well. But all in all, this one performed outstanding, just like every single Sencut I ever test. I'm always in awe, and I get kind of mad sometimes because usually I'm testing 2 to 5 other knives with the Sencut I'm testing, and lo and behold, this one blew those other ones out of the water as far as performance goes. And 2 of them were in 14C 28 inch steel. I don't know what that heat treat was like, but it must not have as good of a heat treat as this Sencut does. For me, this may become my new dedicated truck knife. It's not going to take up a whole lot of real estate as far as thickness goes, and it'll fit in the center console of my truck. I think this would be a great one for that, or camping trips. You know, if you happen to break it or happen to lose it, you know, $53, I'm not going to cry, but I would replace it. So I can't wait to hear what y'all think about the new Sencut Toxodon. Is this something that interests you? And would y'all like to see Sencut make more fixed blades, especially EDC fixed blades? I know I do. After the Waxahachie, I begged them to do some more fixed blades, but you know, they're not going to do it unless everybody's asking for it. So there you go. That is the Sencut Toxodon. If you're interested in picking up one of these, I will have it linked down below in the description. It will be an affiliate link. So if you want to help support this channel, it helps me pay for my testing materials. I can't thank you enough. If not, no sweat at all. And remember, keep those blades sharp. Smile more. Hee-hoo!